All right. We can go ahead and take it away, Doran.
All right. So I'm here to kick things off for us today. Then I'll pass you off to Ilana, who will get into the nuts and bolts of TinyWorld and the open inquiry method. So I'll start by saying before we begin the open inquiry process, I want to place this class within the larger body of work from which it has emerged. The TinyWorld Institute studies the world available through one human life. That world includes consciousness, the biological avatar, the psyche, attention, relationships, territory, environment, and time. It includes what happens to us, how the avatar perceives what happens, what it preserves, and how those experiences continue shaping the life that develops around them. The Institute arose in response to a missing piece in the informational field. We have access to an extraordinary amount of knowledge, but knowledge often arrives in fragments. We may understand something intellectually without knowing where it belongs, what function it serves, or how to live differently because we know it. TinyWorld occupies that missing space between knowing and living. How do I change slides? That's not good. Okay, here we go. Okay, okay. For several centuries, Western knowledge has been strongly shaped by a mechanical understanding of reality. The physical world was understood as a collection of separate objects. Each object could be examined independently. A visible effect was assumed to have a preceding physical cause. When something stopped working, the task was to locate the malfunctioning part and repair it. This approach remains extremely useful for mechanical problems. Quantum mechanics later revealed that reality is, at its smallest scales, does not always behave like a collection of separate, independently existing objects. Relationships matter. Context matters. Some systems must be understood as wholes. Observation itself requires interaction with what is being observed. The TinyWorld Institute does not teach quantum mechanics. Its relevance here is conceptual. It helped open the door to a larger recognition. Not everything can be understood by separating it into parts. Systems thinking carries that recognition into the scale of organisms, relationships, and lives. It asks us to look not only at an individual part, but also at its place, function, and relationship to the whole. Dr. Hamer's work belongs primarily to this systems level. GHK gives us an extraordinary map of how the biological avatar adapts. The TinyWorld Institute begins with that knowledge, but it does not end there. Dr. Hamer describes how the avatar adapts. TinyWorld asks how consciousness can live in right relationship with an avatar that adapts in this way. What does it mean to know that attention can be biologically redirected by an unexpected event? What does it mean to discover that the psyche has preserved an experience for decades because some part of its meaning remained unavailable? What becomes possible when we recognize the function of that preservation rather than viewing it as evidence that something has gone wrong? These are TinyWorld questions. One of the foundations of this work is learning to see what is actually present before deciding what it means or what should be done about it. The more technical description for this is applied human ontology and systems stewardship. Ontology begins with this very simple question: what is this? That is also one of the foundational questions of the TinyWorld Institute. What am I actually looking at? From there, the inquiry continues. What is its nature? What function does it serve? What would right relationship with it look like? What becomes coherent when everything is restored to its proper place? This is not philosophy for its own sake. It is a practical way of examining the structures through which a human life is organized. Attention is one of these structures. A decision is another. Choice, territory, serenity, peace, biological conflict, and relationship each have their own nature and function. When one thing is mistaken for another, incoherence follows. When each is restored to its proper scale, role, and relationship, the underlying order becomes easier to see. Once the structure can be perceived, it becomes possible to live in a more conscious relationship with it. That is the stewardship part of this work. This brings us to open inquiry. If the TinyWorld Institute teaches us to live in right relationship with the human system, open inquiry is one of its foundational practices. It teaches us how to look. Open inquiry does not begin by asking how to eliminate a response, release an emotion, or change a belief. It begins before intervention. It asks, what actually happened? What did the avatar perceive in that instant? What biological program appeared to require an immediate solution? What details were preserved as tracks? What information was unavailable then that may be available now? The purpose is not to impose a better interpretation upon the past. It is to recover enough of the original structure that the event can finally be seen in full. This is the work we are beginning today. Open inquiry approaches a preserved experience without collapsing the event, the perception, the biological response, and its later meaning into one undifferentiated story. The sequence is slowed down. We identify what happened, what the avatar registered, what problem appeared to require a solution, how attention reorganized around it, and what the system may still be waiting to know. Open inquiry does not tell the psyche that it was wrong to preserve the experience. It honors the precision with which the experience was preserved. It then supplies the wider field of information through which the experience can finally be right-sized. That is where biological literacy begins to become attention sovereignty. And that is where knowing begins to become living. We'll pass it off to Ilana.
I'm muted. Thank you, Doran, for that presentation. That was just an overview. It's our intro into what TinyWorld, in a nutshell, seeks to offer the humanity. I could talk about these topics for hours on end. So my job is not to show up here as a lecturer today. It's really to try and restrict the teachings to what open inquiry is and how it can serve us in our everyday life. So I'm going to go through a presentation. It's not as structured as Doran's because I need to be able to flow through the concepts to link them. Then once that presentation is done, we are going to open to a question and answer so that you can reflect back to me where the teachings haven't landed and how we're going to close those gaps for you. At the end of this, our time together, what I hope that we will have done essentially is have given you the opportunity to install a program, more or less. I like to use a lot of mechanistic metaphors because it's kind of the way we are, with our limited capacities, are able to make sense of the world around us. That once this understanding is installed, it starts to become part of the architecture of how you use your psyche, and you start to be able to close the gap between a track that maybe you stepped on and the originating event, and you really start to become a sovereign human being when you can reclaim your attention. And this is one of the methods through which, well, this is the method that I have been using to reclaim my attention that I've now externalized and made turned into something that you can sort of pick up and consume for yourself. So today we're going to show you why attention catches, what it is trying to complete, and how open inquiry helps return a charged experience to its proper place in time. So open is not about taking the original memory and erasing it. It's about completing the attentional task that keeps the memory active in the present. Let's first move into, are you switching the slideshow? Yeah. Okay, perfect. So we're going to start with how open inquiry differentiates itself from the current approach, which is more psychology based. And please recognize that these are all my opinions, essentially my ideas. I consider the fundament of what open inquiry is, what TinyWorld seeks to represent, as open source. It's code that just came through this particular channel. So however it's externalizing itself, the goal is to make it as value neutral as possible, as easy to access as possible without triggering a morality based reaction. So I'm not saying what one thing is or isn't. I am inviting us into, again, the question of what am I looking at? So this is how I'm distinguishing, and I will never cancel out one methodology. They're all parts of the same whole. So all approaches to trying to answer the same question of fundamentally why. But in psychology, the why is we start with the conclusion or the consensus, and we're kind of trying to lead people down to accepting the why. So for psychology to continue to exist or remain the dominant paradigm, we do have to agree that there is that human experience is moral, that there's always a right and a wrong, a bad and a good. TinyWorld approach is more of a humanistic, value neutral understanding of from a biological perspective. So it also encompasses larger worldviews and larger theories, such as Tom Campbell's My Big Toe, that suggests that consciousness is fundamental. Reality is a derivative of consciousness. So everything is just data. And on a biological level, everything just is what it is. So we can't really apply the lens of morality and get an answer other than victim perpetrator if we don't kind of adopt this mode of inquiry. And so long as we remain a victim or a perpetrator, we can never reclaim the full meaning, the whole picture. The what was this for? How did it serve? How does it serve our mission? How do we step into our service? How do we connect with our aliveness, which is the most valuable part of our unique human experience? And our aliveness, as we know, is what brings us most fundamentally into relationship with our purpose, whatever it is. So in psychology, yes, we're trying to answer this preordained question of who's victim and who's perpetrator, in an attempt to restore power to each individual, but it kind of closes there. What we're doing with open inquiry is coming in at the what, with the why being fundamentally, how is it written down here? One sec. I texted to Doran, I didn't write it in my notes. It is when why leads, it may only do so as a first principle. This experience serves the evolution of consciousness towards love. So it has to serve the whole person, the whole unit, whatever it is, however you approach this. And the idea I also wanted to mention, it cannot cancel out any other system of belief. It should incorporate all other systems of belief, because fundamentally any system of belief, whether it's from a scientific perspective or a religious perspective, always seeks in its most fundamental form to answer that question of why are we here, essentially, right? Okay, next. So like the goal with that idea is to keep the what always open, and the only answer to the why is to grow up and become love, essentially, to quote Tom Campbell. Okay, so we're going to move into the metaphor of psyche as library. So just a little bit of information on how this idea came to be in the first place. Through my own open process, I've been uncovering some biological codes of the human avatar, and one of the expressions of the TinyWorld Institute is that the territory of the feminine is serenity and the territory of the masculine is peace. And when I think of where I first connected with true serenity as an autonomous human, female, it was at the library. I would go there every Saturday. It was something that I had my parents' full support to do. And it was the one place where I could be in contact with all the ideas, and I got to pick and choose what worked for me. And I didn't have to account to anybody for how I was consuming information and what I was doing with it. And, the beautiful thing about this library as analogy is, the humans, we've always been, their primary use of language has been through storytelling, and we would pass down over, the information that the next generation needed through storytelling. I'm not an anthropologist, but at some point somebody invented, there was, paper and scrolls, there was cave paintings, there was all kinds of ways human tried to translate language into something that would last beyond them. So it didn't require their presence for the next generation to access it. So we moved into other forms of communication. The printing press is touted as one of the greatest advancements in human technology for transfer of information from groups to other groups. And through the papyrus scroll of the printing press, we did start to create these libraries, which were storehouses for human knowledge, essentially. And now with the digital world, we have this enormous capacity to upload and access and transmit information from one person to the next. But what we haven't really taken that time to understood is how all these external expressions are really just metaphorical representations of what we're doing already. That our psyche is the repository of information about our personal avatar experience in this physical matter reality. And it's so completely unique to us that there is not one other person on the planet who can come in and tell you what the meaning of an event is to you. Not one other person. So I'm going to invite you to enter this metaphor. If it works for you, keep it. If there's something else that makes sense for you, what's one thing about the TinyWorld Institute is it's not like you have to be a TinyWorld Institute member and subscribe to all the beliefs. It's simply the externalization of some concepts as they made sense to me and anybody else who comes and participates. And you borrow it like a book. And if it doesn't work for you, I mean, that's what I love the library for is I'll get a stack of books. If it doesn't hook me by 2 pages, it's not for me. I give it back. That's it. That's the beauty of that system. Next. Okay, so this is where open inquiry really caught my attention. So somehow when I was a kid, I have an image of the school library, which was quite small, but what we learned in the school library was the Dewey Decimal System. I don't know if everybody in this call is old enough to have been taught the Dewey Decimal System, because when libraries became computerized, we stopped having to understand how that system worked. It became automated for us. But it was a really gorgeous system of classification. So the thing with a library is that it expands infinitely. Right? There's no limit to the number of books that can be written that have to be added into the library, but there's no point in having all these books in the library if the information is not searchable, if you cannot open the query and find what you need to match to the request. So we're using the Dewey Decimal analogy as how open inquiry works to access the information stored in the database of your psyche. Okay? Next, yeah. Okay, so this is how we're going to use the analogy. All right, a perfectly organized library. I mean, I don't know. I worked at one point. I had like a volunteer position where I was putting books back on the shelves as a teenager. So it was neat because I had to understand the system. I'd have a cart and I had to understand what that coding system on the spine meant so I could put it back accurately. And one thing that still bothers me when I go to a library is when the sequencing is out of order, when a book is in the wrong place, because what happens is you can't find the book. The system will say it's there, but you can't access the information that's in it because it's not in the right sequence anymore. And this is how we're going to make the leap from this metaphorical library Dewey database system into Dr. Hammer's work, which is the coding of what happens when a memory is the conditions under which it doesn't get filed, essentially. All right, so here let's take a look at this photo because I'm using this metaphorically. We have Elise, who is my avatar in the digital realm of the tiny world. She changes form and size because it's not a human artist creating her, but she represents well a woman who is trying to have a beautiful library experience, a serene library experience, which is a metaphor for her own life. And here she walks into this room, and you can see some of the drawers are open, and there's this pile of cards on the floor. Okay, so I don't know if you look at this image and you're like, oh my God, I am not serene in this moment. There are a bunch of cards on the floor. I now have to stop and take the time to put them away so I can walk past that library catalog. And my attention doesn't get drawn. So here she's walking past this card catalog, and her attention is not is co-opted by the fact that something is out of order. So she could just pick them all up and shove them back and close the drawers rather, and then go on with her life. But the way this particular card catalog works is next time she comes through, the same cards are going to be on the floor. And she's going to be like, what the heck? Why doesn't everything stay where I put it? Well, this is the wrong approach. This is a top-down mechanistic control, power force control approach, where we're shoving those damn cards in the drawer and expecting they're going to stay there, and then being aggravated and shocked and annoyed every time they don't. Okay? Move forward. Okay, so now let's jump into where GHK, we're operating under the assumption that everybody who has come to this presentation has some degree of understanding of what German New Medicine is, Germanische Heilkunde, the work of Dr. Hammer. If you don't, I have a section in the TinyWorld Institute that kind of starting to make it accessible. So I'm not going to super go right now into what GHK represents. You're welcome to ask questions afterwards. We can do a summary. But in essence, Dr. Hammer discovered through the same process that I am coming into my understanding, that there are biological laws that govern the physical matter reality. And for something to become a law, essentially it has to become canon, which means that you can't disprove the theory. So it's not canon yet in the larger collective, even though it is the laws under which we live and operate. We are, through all the work that we're doing as members of the GH community, testing his theories. So the first biological law states that, hold on, I don't have it off the top of my head, but that every disease arises from this unexpected, highly traumatic, emotionally isolating experience. So here you have the DHS as an unexpected, highly traumatic, emotionally isolating experience that the system registers as an urgent biological problem requiring resolution. Okay, so here I made this picture. I hope everyone can see the anatomy of the DHS. There is an event. There is a biological perception. The hits simultaneously, which we're going to explore more, the psyche, brain, and organ, all in the exact same moment. There's not a sequence of it. It's a simultaneously event. There is a corresponding special biological, what I just forgot the word, significant biological special program that runs, which is the adaptation on the avatar organism level. There are tracks, which are screenshots of whatever was present in the moment to link the organism back in time to that original event. The most important thing that we'll explore moving forward is that there was no available response in the moment. Okay, so in the instant of that impact in the DHS, the present is reorganized. This is an attention reallocation and redirection. All right, we're using value neutral language, meaning we're not applying value judgment. There's no lens of morality. It's not good or bad. What it is a reallocation of attention by the system, attention and resources to what suddenly matters. All right, so it's a split second perception. So as you can see, Elise is very happily, your cursor, I think your cursor's on the screen. Don't be distracted by that. It's the man behind the magic. We have the before, in which she's happily just focused on the present and the work in front of her. Then something happens, represented by the cell phone, because that's introduced a beautiful unknown. All kinds of DHSs can come through a cell phone. In the next moment, despite the fact that all conditions appear the same, the reality has reorganized itself around that event. Now there is danger, and her system is in chaos. Okay, so in that moment of the shock conflict, it's one event that impacts on 3 simultaneous layers. The psyche, which is the library and the database through which that's the reference material for that new event. The brain organ, which is how the psyche, I haven't figured this part out yet, and I don't know that consciousness researchers or neuroscience can bridge that gap, because I think some things have to remain unknown about the experience. But the brain level, this is what Dr. Hammer started to see on CT scans, that there was an actual physical, what he called an artifact on a CT scan was actually as far as I understand, it's like a water, like something happens, electrostatically charged water. What's the word? Whatever. Okay, so there's something that happens to the physical brain, which changes. It's kind of like a binary switch from true to false. And what happens is, at the same time, on the organ level, this significant biological special program is initiated, which is how the avatar adapts to that DHS moment. And the details of that are covered in Dr. Hammer's biological laws 2, 3, and 4, which we're not going to talk about today. So across the entire organism, there is this one simultaneous expression. It's a unified occurrence, a unified field where all the attention is redirected to what the psyche perceived as a life or death threat, a problem. Okay. In order for the organism to register this DHS, this emotional shock conflict, 3 conditions must be met, and they must converge at once. So one is the event was highly traumatic to the organism. It was highly acute and it's biologically significant. It represented in that moment life or death. Number 2, it could not be anticipated. So you could not have seen it coming. There was absolutely no way, if you had known it was about to happen, you would have had a prepared response. It would not have met that condition of could not be anticipated. And this one, which is kind of the purview of the TinyWorld Institute, is that it was emotionally isolating. It could not be shared, oriented to, or resolved with another person in that moment. Very important to know, but this is kind of the purview of 2, 3, and 4 again, is that the event itself does not determine what the response is. This is not a deterministic model where every person, this is what, I'm going to call, not non-dismissively, and to welcome modern medicine or conventional medicine into the picture, mechanistic model tries to determine, like same way, you take your car to a mechanic and it's pretty easy to figure out what the problem is because the part broke down and you can replace the part. That's mechanistic, the mechanistic medical system. It doesn't explain the function of the part, why the part is made, the meaning of the parts. This is the work that we do through GHK and through the TinyWorld Institute. So it could be one situation, receiving this text, I can't even see this, invitation canceled. Depending on what's happening in that psyche library, what reference material is being pulled as a match, you could a separation conflict, a territorial loss, or an indigestible morsel. We're not super interested in A plus B equals C. We're more interested in the what of the C in that moment. All right. So the main tragedy, as I see it, the other things are just part of how you learn from life. It's that you could be surrounded by others, but the person remains alone inside a reality no one else can see, receive, or help orient, right? So generally something happens, could be you didn't even register that it was a thing. It passed so quickly by your conscious awareness. Like it's not even, it doesn't register in the consciousness, it's in the subconscious, but it's like before you know it, it started and it's finished, but something is now left open. There's a perception that's kind of running underneath your conscious awareness. It can't be answered. Or in the case of when a DHS happens to a child, nobody came back to explain the meaning of it to them in a way that they could understand. So this is kind of the most tragic aspect of the whole experience, is that the person feels, oh my God, I can't talk to anybody about this. And there's a lot of mechanisms that build up around protecting access to this critical piece of information. Shame is a huge indicator that you've stepped on a track, or that you've had a DHS experience. But what it's basically saying is, this is a really critical bit of data we have to store, and we can't give you access to it, because if we do, then you might start thinking about it or doubting yourself. And the next time it happens again, you're just going to put yourself back in the same position. You're going to be bear food, because that when that metaphorical bear comes along, and you don't have the experience, you could be dead, right? So that's all that it's doing. It's redirecting in the moment that the threat is perceived again, the attention back to the original problem of, you don't have the resources to deal with this. So we have to automate a program so that you don't have to think about it. It's for you, the DHS. It's to ensure that you survive. What's on the next slide? Okay, so the meaning of tracks, that's the word when you start to study GHK comes up. They're just like a railroad track. It leads you back to the original event, so you don't have to think about it. You don't have to consciously build the railroad track so your train doesn't go off. It's to get you back home to the station, or to the next station safely. So it's a constant. When you step on the track, it's just directing you back to the station of departure, from which you left. So that's why we record. So say, the screenshot analogy of, like, in the moment something happens and there was cat dander in the air, and all of a sudden you're like, that's what through your nose, somehow you pick up that piece of cat dander, and then that's what the psyche, one of the things that the psyche associates with the original event. The original event could be your parents say they're getting a divorce, but the psyche registers the cat dander through sensory organ of the nose. So now every time you are near a cat, that's the track to say there's this original event where your life as you knew it ended, and nobody explained to you, right? So it's just leading back to that original event, whatever it is. It could be a phrase, it could be a smell, it could be some like a color, like anything can be a track, so long as it was present in the initial shock conflict and the feeling was associated with that. It was linked somehow with that original conflict. So, here all we're trying to show in this illustration here is there was original DHS involving a phrase. So when Elise goes to the store and that same phrase pops up on her phone, even though she's in the grocery store, she's flashed back to that original event. Good. Okay. So I know there's a few things that I missed about the meaning of the DHS. I am creating a lot of collateral about that, but a DHS in and of itself, I mean, best analogy is, wow, I just forgot the name of the movie. What's the movie with the little girl with the feelings when those glass bubbles? Inside Out. Yeah. So it's kind of like there's so many great analogies in media for what what emotions are, what feelings are, all of that. I feel like so many of them are about 90% of the way there, but because it's using still the mechanistic medical model versus what Dr. Hammer gave us, which is essentially the schematics of the avatar, like what it responds to. If we could understand, this is my vision for humanity, is that the mechanistic medical model, we keep it because it can actually save your life, but the integration is through Dr. Hammer's work, then we have the whole story. We have both sides of the coin, which is the complete experience of the human the biological avatar. It's not just for humans. So in Inside Out, if you've seen it, she has a bad, or an experience, a good or a bad, and then she gets this little glass bubble that then goes into this whole. It's a very good analogy for all the cards are dumped on the floor because something happens to her and it threatens to upend her entire existence because she can't find this one reference point. Well, think of a DHS as a tiny world in and of itself. It's the complete story of what happened to you. And all the data is available in it, and it's all stored in your psyche, and it's a reference point for something that feels the same. But the problem with it is we get stuck in these loops. So, and we don't know why. I should say, this is part of the law of two phases, which is the second is it? Okay, well, I'm not, yeah, second biological law, I think. It's the law, yeah, the law of two phases. Thank you, Courtney. We know it uses the sine curve as, showing serenity or peace. So when the distance above the median line is the same as below, we're experiencing peace or serenity. And then we have a shock conflict, or we step on a track and now we're like all in chaos, and then we solve for the original problem, and then we have to go into this repair phase. We're going to work with now, and you can all bring to mind a repeating symptom that you can't figure out. Could be anything, could be a rash, could be a sore shoulder, could be hemorrhoids. Personal problem here, which I just cracked the code on finally last night. I think we'll see. I'll let you know. But generally, you understand those symptoms all present when you're in resolution. There's very few symptoms that present in conflict active. So what we're looking for to know we're in conflict active and our attention is being redirected to a problem is rumination. The other thing is cold hands, but I don't know. I live in winter, so not a very reliable reference point for me. But rumination, it's like, as one of the GHK teachers, Martin, likes to say, what are you busy with? What is your attention being pulled to that you don't know your attention's being pulled to? Right? That was one of the very valuable turns of phrase that help unlock this process. All right, so we are going to, and by the way, when I finish this presentation, we're going to stop to pee. So just bear with me until that before we move into the Q&A. We're going to pee. We have a memory sorting system. So on the left here, we have a very nicely organized filing system. All the cards are in place. There's a chronological filing from, your birth until where you're at right now. None of these cards, because they have gone into the filing system, have a conflict association with them. So there is no charge about the initial shock conflict. So they just automatically get sorted. And you can be like, oh yeah, remember that time, we went to the beach when you were 5. Oh yeah, it was so much fun. There were the late waves laughing. And I remember my dad picked me up and he ran into the water and it was so much fun. And so those are all like happy memories, let's say, to assign morality to them. However, when a card has, or a memory has a conflict attached to it, it doesn't get sorted. It gets dumped on the ground, which is the pile on the right. There is no morality to this process. The point of this is to preserve coherence in the system so we can just go about our daily lives. Because if all the time our attentions were on this card that was on the floor, nothing would get done. So for anybody who experiences anxiety or panic, who spend a lot of time in conflict activation, you can't get a lot done when you're in conflict activity. So we need to preserve the coherence of the system. By most of the time, everything's fine. But then some of the times you step on a track because it's reminding you of the original event. And then the experience of yourself is incoherent. Translated into human avatar language, you're neither serene nor at peace, depending on which model you occupy. Okay, so if the conflict decides what can be filed. If there is no conflict, we file in sequence. If there is a conflict, yes, we drop for later processing. Okay, next. Okay, so now we get into the juice of this. When Doran and I were running a weekly GHK meeting at our house, I remember sitting, I can't remember exactly, but I have the image of sitting at our table over here. And it came to me that the key to finding the original shock conflict in all the tracks was, of course, to ask the question, what? But I had like this image pop up of like when you open a Google search bar and you type a question into it, what the server does, I don't know, I'm not whatever you have to be a programmer or a coder, whatever it is, that's a whole separate purview. You don't program the responses that come back. The system determines the answers that match the question based on certain conditions, like where you live, I don't even know. We can take this analogy further, but the answers that I get here in Montreal are not the same to the question, are not the same answers that somebody living in Nebraska or in Russia or in China are going to get, even if the question is the same, because it's contextual. So when I talk about opening a query tab, can I just see on your screen what's next? Because you can't see. Sorry, can you just skip ahead? I want to make sure. Keep going. No, okay, it's fine. Go back. It's okay. No. Yeah. So the query tab is really just, you're holding an open tab. Again, this is where we're going to understand that what produces context, where why closes the inquiry. All right. So we're not looking to conclude. Oh no, I don't think I made a slide for this. It's something that came up when I was revising the what open inquiry is this morning. So the second we force the conclusion, we're out of curiosity, and we will only get the information that answers that answer that we've already determined is what the question even was based on, right? This is what consensus science is based on, that we have to conclude before we have all the information. The open inquiry process is a lifelong process. It invites you to remain open and curious about the entire overview of your life experience. Depending on how much of a meta thinker you are, you can expand this all the way out to the underlying principle of consciousness. But we will always want to be in the beginner mindset of what am I looking at? Always coming back to what am I looking at? What am I looking at? What am I looking at? And when we think we've seen what we're looking at, we still don't conclude. The only conclusion can be the why of this is for my own good. It's in my own best interest. It's for me, so I can grow up and become love. But if ever, this is how GHK in and of itself can become a deterministic model, can become a, what's the word? I just forgot it. Another way to pathologize the human experience, because we are concluding before we have all the data about the meaning of an expression. So what is your most powerful question always? So essentially what we're going to do, we're walking along, and then we step on a track somewhere. We don't even know what it is. The hardest thing to do, this is the hardest work, but once you figure out how to do it the first time, it becomes easier. You have to notice that suddenly your attention's not on the present. So you're having a nice conversation with somebody, and then they say a word, and all of a sudden you can't hear them anymore. And why is that? Okay, we're not interested in the why. Is you stepped on a track. It meant it led you back to that original attention redirect. But now we're interested in the what. And the what that we're interested in is the feeling. And the feeling can be reduced to presence or not presence, coherent or incoherent. It's a true or a false, a yes or a no. Am I able to take in with my sense data what's in the present right now, or am I somewhere else in a past experience? Okay, that is the hardest thing to notice. That's where I'm going to invite you to begin your noticing practice as you just walk along. Notice where your attention is, not even where your thoughts are. What are you paying attention to in this moment? And then the next step is, if you're curious and you want to resolve this, you then see this visual of kind of popping up the search tab. Okay, you're opening up the query. And you're inquiring into the what. That's what's happening here. Okay, so here's the fun mechanistic breakdown of how the psyche works. In the original DHS moment, there was a feeling that was preserved. And the feeling in and of itself is a data stream, and it has all the what that's in it. Okay, it's a transmission, it's a code, it's a whatever analogy works for you. When you step on the track, you're access to that original feeling. All right. So the first thing we do is we say, oh, I'm feeling something. One of the most useful, okay, I'm just gonna skip ahead next. We're switching by feeling, not by story. That was the point of this slide. Then when we match the feeling, we can safely sort it, and we return this card back to its proper time. It's nicely filed. We locate, we recognize, we return to the sequence. All these images are available on the TinyWorld Institute, so you can go back and look at them after if you want to see what they really mean. Next. Okay, and these are the pathways. So this is the overview of what open inquiry is. What's the next one? Okay, no, let's go back one. Oh yeah, this is the one we want. Okay, this is the one I want. All right, so we see there's an attentional signal or there's a physical signal, right, in the first cards. We notice the interruption, our presence, our attention co-opted in that moment. First thing we're going to do, the easiest way to do this is say, how old do I feel in this moment? Okay, and this is where we have to really trust our libraries, trust our psyche experience. Nobody knows them better than you do. And I remember watching a presentation from Alvin de Leon one time, and he goes, if it's all a lie, what a beautiful lie. Who cares? You don't have to get it right. There is no right or wrong. There's no ego involved in this process. It's not about being right. It's about reclaiming your attention and becoming attention sovereign, so you can now make choices about how you want to live your life. So when we say how old do you feel in that moment, it's the number that pops up. You don't even have to think about it. You just hold the space open, and a number might, that's how it works for me. I can see right now 7 has floated, possibly because I have it tattooed here, but 7 has floated up to my conscious awareness. The psyche will always give you the information that helps you locate that original event in the sequence of chronological time. Okay, so another thing could be like, when's the first time you felt this? Well, I was 7. Okay, what happened when you were 7? Okay, we don't try and force this. We don't think about it. We allow an image or a memory to surface. The odd thing about this process, and it's not something we're ever going to be able to prove through any scientific method, or we can never prove anything through science, can't disprove it enough that it becomes canon, because you can't get inside somebody else's mind. But we can probably, in doing this work together, posit and support the theory and then move on to the next one, that whatever memory floats up in that moment is the memory that matches the feeling. And we have this habit because we're like, oh, I always know about it. I think about it all the time. It can't be that, to dismiss the thing, because it can't be that obvious. It can't be that simple that the information has been available to us all along. And everyone, when I do this work with people, they're like, I don't think this is related, but like every time, that is actually the hint that it is related, because this is a brilliant safeguard of the mechanism. Are you sure you want to go there? It's one last opportunity to dismiss this. Okay, so if you are like, I can't see how this is related, so it must not be, and you're ready to do the work, stay there. Now, in the first pass, you may not get all the information. This thing will keep resurfacing and matching this feeling until it's complete. And what I'm learning now is there could be 15 DHSs in that single event. There could be 105. We don't know. But there's a few that are relevant and relative to your present day experience that you want to resolve. So it will keep coming up until you get out the data that you need, and then you can safely archive that card, because it's not interfering, or it's not controlling your present. It's not co-opting your present day experience. It's not getting in the way of you living the life that you want. All right. So then we're going to trace the matching experience, and then we're going to return it to present scale, right? So we're right sizing. So events that seemed super, super scary because you were a kid, or seemed like, personal, are no longer, because you can set everything in right relationship. At like the way you reset the game after it's finished, you reset the chessboard, you put everything back in its piece, and it's no longer a game in play, or a problem to be solved, or a game to be won. Okay. What I'm going to caveat this whole, because I've extracted the mechanics of it, but this is human experience is entirely relationally built. This is a large part of Dr. Hammer's work, from the brainstem to the cerebral cortex. Our entire existence depends on relationship, either with the world around us or with other people. So when you do start the open inquiry practice, it works best when you have a trusted human to receive you, and that's the role of the therapist, is to really, Carl Rogers, my recall memory doesn't work in these moments, but this is the whole point of humanistic psychology, is the therapist is not elevating themselves as expert. They're on the same level. They're just the neutral third party that could stand in for the parent we didn't have, who didn't receive us fully, and help us make sense of our world experience. So find a human being that can receive you without trying to correct your feeling, to co-opt your feeling, to make it into theirs. It's just really somebody who can receive and listen and then ask you, okay, what does this mean to you? What do you want to do with it? It's someone who can question you in the process and help make sense of it. Trustworthy person receives the share without correcting, minimizing, or talking the person out of what they felt. That's the whole thing. Somebody's trying to talk you out of what you feel. You can't do this work because it's immediately going to hit identity conflicts or sexual frustration or something. That's going to be another track depending what you have going for you. So yeah, we have to understand that we can't go back in time and change the event. That can't be changed. It just happened, but we're looking to resolve for the emotional isolation by removing the charge. What's the next? All right, so then here's the original DHS is right-sized. All the pieces are in place. It's found, it's understood, it's returned to scale. The memory remains part of the history without occupying the present. So that book stays on the shelf and the card helps you to find it. So if you need to access it, it now becomes part of available resources, which was the problem we were trying to solve in the first place, that there was no response available. You now have cataloged this as a response for next time. So the event cannot meet the first criteria. It can't be highly traumatic, nor can it be unexpected. Okay? The way out is always the way in. Next. And here we have Elise walking into her library. The cards are closed because she knows everything remains where it is. Her attention is not being co-opted by exploding drawers or whatever. You see how calm and serene she looks. She can now enjoy just sitting in the library, picking the book choosing the book by its cover, opening it up, seeing if it resonates, putting it back. There's no charge to any of it. Okay? The memory remains, the snag does not. Attention returns to the present. Okay, I'm going to give you one case study from my own personal experience, then we're going to pause and we're going to come back for Q&A. So if you have spent any time with me in person or you've seen me in the screen, you will probably, and you've paid any attention to me, I'm assuming you pay attention to me, but you notice I have this habit of twirling my hair. Okay, I have done this hair twirling thing. You also notice I did very little of it during this presentation because I have resolved a lot of the original conflicts that motivated that expression. I have run this program for a very, very long time of compulsive hair twirling, and it did not become available to me to do the work to deconstruct it and figure out the meaning of it until very, very recently. And this is the thing, you have to trust your psyche processes, that when safety is perceived, the program that was there before comes up for review. So don't try and force anything. If you try and force resolution of a process before the system, before the avatar registers the conditions are safe, you're not going to get anywhere. It's just not going to work. So finally, I've been always like, what's the meaning of this? What's the meaning of it? I couldn't hold my attention long enough on the hair twirling. I was annoyed by it. It didn't feel good, but I couldn't hold my attention long enough on it to resolve it because the conditions hadn't been met in which resolution became available. I could actually safely access those pathways back to the original event. So here I'm going to tell the story. Okay. And here's my little graphic novel. And don't pay too much attention to the details because, again, it's not a human creating these images for me, so we're not paying attention to details. So here's me, 15 years old, super cute. I, at some point, decided to, cut my hair really, really short. I had a long hair. I cut it short and I left this one piece, which was a rat tail, because it was how I was kind of marking myself as cute and quirky and whatever. And I haven't examined that, but it's not germane to this recollection. In any case, I was the weird kid who had these distinguishing characteristics, and I was super proud of this braid. It was really marked me as me. And I used to work with Fimo, like that clay that you can bake, and I made myself beads to put on the end of it, and I had a super cool bead that glowed in the dark. Like, it was just like the coolest thing ever. Okay, so I had a friend at the time who was one of my best friends from kindergarten, and she lived not too far from me, and she lived in, like, compared to what the rest of us lived in, like a villa. She had a Parisian French mother who her father had brought her here and like placed her in this villa to uphold the life to which she'd become accustomed growing up. And it was like the most magnificent place. There was rooms upon rooms. Her mother was a pianist. There was all like European finery, like everything was very, very high quality. So I loved being there. It was just, it's a place that, young girls can just spend they can stay girls in as well, and just connect with a real sensory experience of very high quality material. So that was great. But as I started to hit puberty and my attention turned towards boys, my friend had 2 older sisters, and there was always young men around. So it was another reason to want to be in this house. So her eldest sister, who was probably 6 years older than us, had this boyfriend I'm going to call Gordon to protect anonymity. So here's Gordon. And as you can see, I'm sitting at the breakfast table because there's the breakfast in front of me. And even though there's the girls across the table, my attention is actually on the male presence, Gordon, who I have a crush on. So you can see that's what it's trying to say, is that my attention is towards him and he's paying attention to me. All right. So that's where my attention was. So 15 years old, I was like, oh my gosh, this is not totally conscious. What can I do to impress this guy? So you can't see super clearly, but I decided in that moment to take my braid and swing it around my head. Be like, look how cool I am. Look what I can do with my braid. Next slide. Here's the outcome. Stupid idiot. I knocked over the breakfast bowl. Immediately, what I recall Gordon doing was going, woo! Like making fun of me, repeating what I did, and then laughing because the outcome was this bowl of food spilled on the table. Okay, so here we have a DHS moment. Let's move to the next slide. In that next moment, there was, and I'm sure there's more to it than this, but this is the one that deconstructs the meaning of my hair twirling. My relational role, my position was compromised. All at once, I go from the cool chick to the absolute buffoon. The other person in that scene who my attention turned to was the mother, who I can't even remember what name I gave her. Margot, that's what I called her. Who was now all of a sudden, I'm not like an honorary family member. I'm a nuisance. So it's not even that I'm caught between 2 chairs. It's almost like 4 chairs, right? My position with this guy who is the object of my attention, and my place in this household. Am I welcome back because I'm an idiot? Yeah. The next scene relates back to the present moment where I would twirl my hair. So in this motor conflict, this is where the information is. The information is in the movements, the compulsive repetitive movement that I'm doing. What is it leading me back to? This is the location. So it's almost always the right side. You probably rarely see me on the left side. If you see me twirling the left side, it's only because I'm using my right hand to speak with my hands. There was a moment right before I made the stupid decision, and I'm using these words because I'm being my 15-year-old self. I don't have this morality encoded in the original experience anymore. Right before I made this original decision to try and impress Gordon, I had been playing with my hair. There was a moment I let it go, right? So I keep coming back to this movement of making sure it's safe. The braid is staying where I put it, so I can't disrupt it. Okay. Now, that led me back to the original when I was like, okay, what's the feeling behind this? And I knew this. I knew I had the braid. I was always talking about having this braid. I didn't understand how that braid, how I engaged with it, put me at risk in that moment. And so that's what the twirling led me back to when I sat with it. What's coming up? That image popped up. What was there? I had to connect with the feeling of an instant fall from grace. How catastrophic that was for me. So if I connect it, part of what you have to do to find these things is, what was I thinking right before I started doing this movement? what I link it back to is every time I am finding myself between two chairs, where for all intents and purposes, those two positions I was in, Gordon and the mother, like were status. They were represented a particular status that were catastrophic for me to lose. So it doesn't matter that it's two people or two positions. I'm just stuck between two decisions that appear to have equal weighting. So, as an example, we have a system in our house because we have so many teenagers here to keep the house running and to teach the children how to be stewards of a household. Chores that have to be carried out daily, and it's a rotating cycle, and every day somebody has a chore. So I was first able to stop and catch my thoughts when it was my day to walk the dogs. I knew I wouldn't be home, and the question was, who do I assign the role to? Doran, in which I have to assume the role of wife, or one of the kids, in which I have to assume the role as mother and teacher. And they're equally weighted decisions. They both have merits, but equal value does not equal. It does not translate to equal placement, right? What the right way to go. So every time I catch myself perseverating, there's some little identity conflict I have to resolve, which is what is the appropriate role, and then calculating all the costs of that decisions afterwards, which I wasn't able to do in that moment when I compromised my position. I will start to play with my hair. So next scene. Okay, well, this is just the open inquiry begins with the movement, not the explanation for the movement. So my hand moved to the former braid. I'm caught between two chairs. Those are the positions. And now I have to pause. It's telling me this, when my hand goes to my hair, it's just a feedback mechanism now that tells me I'm not certain what position to occupy in this moment. Okay, next scene. So the signal is leading me back to the original conflict in which I didn't make a good choice in the end, and it compromised my position. So it returns me to a sovereign position where the choice is back in my hands. And it just reminds me to slow down and wait and ask what is there before jumping to conclusion about the why of it and the meaning of it before the judgment. Okay, is that the last slide? Okay, so the hand movement was not random. It marked the threshold where one action appeared capable of changing two relationships at once. So I have to ask, what is my body doing? What feeling in the present is present the instant before I move to repeat the movement? Where did these two things first belong together? And then back to what was there? What, always what? And the why is, well, now I'm learning a heck of a lot. I can tell you I could give you the whole arc of the teachings of that DHS, but that's for another conversation at another time. But this is how we use open inquiry to return to the origin, to the original shock conflict, and release our attention from it into the present, where we can actually now solve the problem through the same mechanism by which we entered the conflict. Okay, I'm going to end on this note, which is deeply philosophical. The human experience is 100% perfect. That's what Dr. Hammer taught us. There is deep meaning and good reason for everything your avatar does. Where we get caught is we start to live in the 0.00. I just put this number because it's pretty damn big, but you can keep going with it. Like where we cannot yet see the perfection, and we mistake that for the whole, for the entirety. Okay, so I'm going to invoke Dr. Hammer's fifth biological law, the quintessence. Everything is already perfect. Your job is, you cannot improve on perfection. By design, there's nothing what we perceive as perfect, whether it's through beauty or symmetry or whatever it is. This indicates that we do not feel we can improve as humans. We cannot engage in a hubristically mistaking ourselves for God or the gods. All right. So I invite you through this work and through the work of the TinyWorld Institute to understand that everything is for you. There's a larger arc. You can apply it to you can apply this principle to whatever belief system you live under without excluding any other. And it's just what it is. I think that's the end of my presentation.